The New Mexico desert stretched out beneath a sun that seemed determined to burn everything it touched. Caleb Hartley had been riding since dawn, following a dry riverbed that would eventually lead him to water, or so the old maps promised. His horse was tired, his canteen was nearly empty, and the heat shimmered off the rocks in waves that made his eyes ache. He had been on the trail for 3 weeks, moving cattle to a buyer in Santa Fe, and all he wanted now was to find water, rest his horse, and be on his way. But as he rounded a bend in the canyon, he saw something that made him pull up short. In the shade of an overhang, barely visible against the red rock, a woman lay crumpled on the ground. Beside her, a small boy no more than 7 years old knelt, his small hands pressed against her side, trying to stop blood that seeped between his fingers. Caleb dismounted before he could think about what he was doing, his instincts taking over where caution might have argued for prudence. He crossed the distance to the woman in a dozen long strides and dropped to his knees beside her. She was Apache, her face young but already marked by hardship, her dark hair matted with dust and something darker blood. Her eyes were closed, her breathing shallow, and the wound in her side was bad. Too bad for a woman alone in the desert with only a child to help her. The boy looked up at him, and in his dark eyes, Caleb saw something that made his chest tighten. Not fear, but a desperate, burning hope that this stranger might be the answer to prayers. He was too young to know how to speak. "Help her," the boy said, his voice cracking. "Please." They heard her. They chased us. "Please help my mother." Caleb did not hesitate. He pulled his canteen from his saddle, wet a cloth, and pressed it against the woman's wound, trying to stop the bleeding. He did not ask who had hurt her, or why, or how they had come to be alone in this desert. Those questions could wait. Right now, a woman was dying, and a child was watching, and there was no time for anything but the work of keeping her alive. He worked in silence, his hands steady, his movements efficient, and as he worked, he heard the boy whisper something in his mother's earwords in Apache that Caleb did not understand, but whose meaning was clear enough. "Please don't leave me." The woman's eyes fluttered open as Caleb pressed a fresh bandage against her side. Her gaze found his face, and for a moment, there was nothing in her eyes but the fog of pain and the confusion of someone who had been pulled back from a place she had nearly gone. Then awareness returned, sharp and sudden, and her hand shot out to grip his wrist with a strength that surprised him. "My son," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Where's my son?" The boy appeared at her side, pressing his small face against her shoulder, and some of the tension went out of her. But not all of it. She looked at Caleb again, and in her eyes, he saw something that made him understand that her wound was not the only danger she faced. "They will come," she said, her voice growing stronger as the urgency of her words pushed back the pain. "Men who hunt us, they will follow. They will find us." Her hand tightened on his wrist, and she pulled him closer, her face inches from his. "I am Nuna. My son is Kai. I have nothing to give you. No money, no horses, no treasure." She paused, and something shifted in her expression. A decision being made, a line being crossed. "But if you protect my son, I will be yours forever. I swear it before the spirits. My life for his, my freedom for his safety. Say yes, and I am yours." Caleb stared at her, the weight of her words pressing down on him like the desert heat. He understood what she was offering. In the old ways, such promises were binding, sacred, unbreakable. She was giving him everything she had, her body, her future, her very freedom in exchange for her son's life. It was the kind of offer that men in this territory dreamed of, the kind of offer that some would kill for. He could take her at her word. He could claim her as his own, and by the laws of the frontier and the traditions of her people, she would belong to him. But as he looked at her, at the desperation in her eyes, at the love that made her willing to sacrifice everything for her child, he felt something rise in him that was not greed or desire. It was something he had not expected. It was anger. "Get up," he said, his voice low and hard. Confusion flickered across her face. I said, "Get up, both of you. We're leaving." He stood and reached down, pulling her to her feet with a strength that left no room for argument. She swayed against him, the blood loss making her dizzy, but she did not fall. The boy rose too, his small hand finding his mother's, his eyes fixed on Caleb with a wariness that was older than his years. "You did not answer," Nuna said, her voice uncertain. "You did not say yes." Caleb lifted her onto his horse, then swung up behind her, pulling the boy up after. He looked down at her, and his voice, when he spoke, was quieter than before. "I'm not buying a woman today. I'm saving one. Now hold on." They rode through the rest of the afternoon, following the dry riverbed until it finally gave way to a thin stream of water that had not yet been swallowed by the sun. Caleb stopped there, letting the horse drink while he helped Nuna down and checked her wound. The bleeding had slowed, but she was pale, and he knew that without proper care, she would not last another day. He looked around at the desert stretching in every direction, at the empty miles between this place and anything resembling safety, and made a decision. "There's a trading post about half a day north," he said. "If we push hard, we can make it by nightfall. But I need to know who's chasing you and why." Nuna sat against a rock, the boy curled beside her, her face drawn but her eyes clear. "My husband was a leader among our people," she said slowly. "He spoke for peace. He believed that Apache and white men could share this land. There were men among our own who hated him for it, and there were white men who feared him for his influence." She closed her eyes for a moment, and when she opened them, they were bright with unshed tears. "They came at night. They killed him. They would have killed us too, but Kaya and I escaped. They hunt us now because they know that while we live, his words live. They want to silence his voice forever." Caleb listened in silence, his jaw tightening as she spoke. He had seen the kind of men who killed for ideas, who murdered in the dark because they were too cowardly to fight in the light. He had hoped, when he left the last war behind him, that he would never have to face them again. But here they were, chasing a woman and a child across the desert, and somehow he found himself standing between them. "How many?" he asked. Nuna looked at him, and in her eyes he saw the answer before she spoke. 6, maybe more. They are well armed. They have horses. They will not stop. 6 men, well armed with fresh horses, against one cowboy, a wounded woman, and a child. The odds were impossible. Any sane man would ride away, would leave this trouble behind, would go back to his cattle and his solitary life, and pretend he had never seen the desperate woman in the canyon. Caleb looked at the boy Kai, who had fallen asleep against his mother's side, his small face peaceful in a way that only children who do not understand the danger can be. Then he looked at Nuna, who was watching him with an expression that held no expectation, no demand, only the quiet acceptance of someone who had learned not to hope. 6 men, he said, more to himself than to her. We'll need to find a place where we can see them coming. Nuna stared at him. You are not leaving. It was not a question. Caleb shook his head slowly. I'm out leaving. He busied himself with packing the horse, checking his rifle, making sure they had enough water for the ride north. Nuna watched him, and when he looked up, there was something in her face that had not been there before. Not hope, exactly, but something close. Something that looked like the first crack in a wall she had built around herself. You did not answer my promise, she said quietly. You did not claim what I offered. Caleb met her eyes, and his voice was gentle when he spoke. I don't claim people. Not women, not children, not anyone. I'm a free man, and I believe everyone deserves to be free. When this is over, you'll owe me nothing. Do you understand? She did not answer, but something in her expression shifted. She looked at him as if seeing him for the first time, not as a rescuer, not as a man with power over her, but as something else, something she had not expected to find in this desert. "You are strange," she said finally. "Most men would have taken what I offered." Caleb smiled, the first smile he had allowed himself in days. Most men are fools. He helped her back onto the horse, settled the boy in front of her, and swung up behind them. "Now, let's find a place to make a stand." They reached the trading post just as the sun was setting, painting the desert in shades of blood and gold. It was a small place, a single building with a corral out back, run by an old trader named Finch, who had been in the territory so long he no longer remembered which side of the line he had started on. Caleb had done business with him before, and he knew the man kept a rifle behind the counter and a shotgun under the bed. More importantly, he knew the trading post was built of thick adobe with windows that faced all directions and a roof that gave a clear view of the surrounding desert. If they were going to make a stand, this was the place to do it. Finch looked at Nuna and the boy with the kind of expression that said he had seen too much to be surprised by anything anymore. He did not ask questions. He simply handed Caleb a box of ammunition for his rifle, pointed to the window facing south and said, "You'll see them coming from there. They'll be here before midnight, if they're as close as you think." Caleb nodded, took the ammunition, and climbed to the roof as the last light faded from the sky. Nuna followed him, leaving Kai with Finch in the main room. She sat beside Caleb on the roof, her wounded side making her movements slow, but her eyes were sharp as she scanned the darkness. They sat in silence for a long time, watching the desert turn from gold to purple to black beneath a sky thick with stars. Caleb could feel her presence beside him, the warmth of her shoulder almost touching his, the soft rhythm of her breathing. He thought about what she had offered him in the canyon, her freedom for her son's life, and he thought about what he had said in return. He had meant it. He had never wanted to own anyone. But as he sat beside her in the darkness, he realized that there was something he wanted, something he had not allowed himself to want in a very long time. He wanted her to choose him, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. The sound came just before midnight, the distant thud of hooves, the low murmur of voices, the unmistakable sound of men who believed they had nothing to fear. Caleb counted them in the darkness, 6, just as Nuna had said. They rode slowly, their torches cutting bright swaths through the night, making them easy to see against the black desert. They were not trying to hide. They did not know he was there. Caleb raised his rifle, took aim at the lead rider, and fired. The shot echoed across the desert like thunder, and the lead rider's torch flew from his hand as the bullet struck his arm. The other 5 scattered, shouting, firing blindly into the darkness. But Caleb had already moved, already taken aim again, and this time his shot found a horse, sending it crashing to the ground. The fight lasted less than 10 minutes. Caleb fired from the roof, his shots precise, his movements deliberate. He did not aim to kill, not yet, but to wound, to scatter, to make them understand that this was not the easy hunt they had expected. When the third rider went down with a bullet in his shoulder, the others had had enough. They turned their horses and fled into the darkness, leaving their wounded behind, leaving the woman and child they had hunted for so long. Caleb lowered his rifle and watched them go, his heart pounding in his chest, his hand steady on the stock. Beside him, Nuna let out a breath she had been holding for what seemed like hours. When the dawn came, they buried the wounded men who had not survived the night and sent the others on their way with a warning that Caleb did not need to speak aloud. Finch fed them breakfast, gave them supplies for the journey, and watched them go with a shake of his head and a muttered comment about fools and angels. They rode south toward the mountains where Nuna's people had found refuge, and as the sun rose behind them, she turned to look at him. "You never answered me," she said. "In the canyon, I offered you everything. You said nothing." Caleb looked at her, at the woman who had offered her freedom for her son's life, at the mother who had been willing to give everything for the child sleeping in her arms. "I'll answer you now," he said. He reined in his horse, and she did the same, and for a moment They sat facing each other in the middle of the desert, the rising sun painting them both in gold. "I don't want you because you promised yourself to me," he said slowly. "I don't want you because you owe me. I want you to be free. I want you to choose the life you want, the people you love, the future you build." He paused, and something in his voice shifted, softened. "But if someday you find that you want to choose me, I'll be there. Not because you promised, but because I'll be hoping." Nuna looked at him for a long, breathless moment, and then she smiled, the first real smile he had seen on her face. "You are strange," she said again, but this time the word was not a question. It was something softer, something that sounded like the beginning of an answer. She reached out and took his hand, her fingers warm against his, and they rode on together into the rising sun. A cowboy, an Apache woman, and a child who had been saved not by promises or bargains, but by a choice that neither of them had expected to make. And in that choice, they found something that no promise could ever buy: a beginning.